Chapter 15. New Digs in Progress. Early as usual, John sat at his desk drinking a cup of coffee. He was going to see Daniela in a couple of hours to look at office furniture. Although he wasn't a big shopper, he thought of doing it for JT's made him smile. He had to call his crews to make sure everything was going all right, and his assistance wasn't required. Besides that, he had nothing pressing to do, so felt he'd give some thought to get new roofing jobs. He looked out the window and saw snow accumulated on the roofs, so there wasn't much point in driving around to see if some were in obvious need of new shingles. He decided he would use maps and his knowledge of the city to target given areas. He started to make a flyer. He remembered when JT's was in trouble, and it seemed so much more urgent then. Now he was taking his time, and the necessity of getting a job much diminished, but that didn't mean he was taking the situation he found himself in for granted. He could use the jobs to grow JT Renovations. He wanted to get at least 2 per month. Any more than that he considered gravy. But there was no way he would turn them down. It was seasonal work, so he had more flexibility. He had been working on the roofing flyer for a couple of hours when he noticed the time. Daniela will be here soon, he thought. He started to clear his desk and decided he had time for a coffee, so went to get one. He sat at his desk, lost in thought. Good thoughts. He couldn't complain. JT's was doing well, and he was getting new headquarters. In fact, he and Daniela were going to go out today to look at furniture. Speaking about Daniela, he had a new girlfriend who not only had just professed her love for him, she had gone beyond the call of duty in his mind when she had more than wholeheartedly accepted his children into her life. He had started to work out and was beginning to get to know Jean-Paul. The children, as far as he could tell, accepted Daniela. His thoughts brought a smile to his face. He smiled some more and thumped his fist on the desk. "All right," he mumbled. He heard Daniela pull into the parking lot. He looked at the clock. Yeah, it's that time. He drank the remainder of his coffee and put his coat on. "Hi, John," she said, coming through the front door. "Hi. How are you?" "I'm fine. And you?" "I'm fine too. Shall we go? We will take your car or my truck?" "My car. That way I can drive," she said, smiling. His head turned abruptly. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. "You can drive my truck, or the Audi for that matter, whenever you'd like." "I know," she said reassuringly. "I've never asked. I don't think I'll be asking when it comes to the truck. The Audi?" she said with her voice rising. "That may be a different story." "Anytime you would like, just let me know," he said, smiling. "Let's go." "I will." "I know you will. Do you have a plan?" "I thought we'd go to Kearney's and Staples first to see what they have. From there, we should get some ideas. We can go to places like Leon's or other furniture shops too. We'll see." "Sounds good. Did you want to look around? It's not very big. It'll only take a minute. Okay, I should. Well, this is my office, he said with his hand held out. And moving his hand in the direction of the door, he continued. And that's the entrance. It's small, but it has worked so far. Have you seen everything you'd like to see? I think so. You have more space at the new place. What are you planning to do with the extra room? I don't know, but I was thinking of using it as a meeting room initially. I can get updates from the guys on how the jobs are going. That's a good idea. If we expand, he paused, let's say I get an accountant. I can always turn it into an office. She smiled. That's a good idea. Let's run with that for now. Why had Daniela smiled? She had smiled because one of the reasons she had fallen for him was his optimism. Despite what was happening around him, and ever since she had known him, a lot of horrible things surrounded him. He always looked at the positive side of things. He still saw JT's growing. They got in her car and headed to the farthest place, Kearney's. She parked and they went inside hand in hand. She was smiling. They walked around, but it seemed as though Kearney's was more of a store to replenish consumables, not an office furniture store. They did have some desks and chairs. Daniela, grabbing John's hand, pulled him in their direction. Neither of them said anything. They just looked. They looked at one another. Would you like to be going? She asked. I think so. They didn't have a lot of furniture. No, they didn't. Some, but not a lot. It will still give you some ideas. I agree. Let's go check out Staples. See what they have, okay? Okay. And they left the store. Daniela hadn't parked very far away. She managed to get a spot almost in front of the store. The Staples store was on Notre Dame and had its own parking lot, so parking wasn't an issue, like it potentially could have been for Kearney's. Like Kearney's, the store had a lot of consumables. It also had a lot more furniture. That was of more interest to them, so they spent their time looking at it to get some ideas. Because he had been to both stores, John came to the realization that the furniture he had was out of date. He wanted his new office to have a new, more modern look. JT's can afford it, he thought. Have you seen enough? I think so. And I've decided that JT's will have to modernize. The furniture I have needs to be replaced. Looking down at his watch, he said, It's only 11, but I was wondering, would you like some lunch? She smiled. I'd love some. Where would you like to go? There's a place not far from here. It's not fancy, but it's adequate, especially for lunch. Where is it? Just down the road. It's only about 5 minutes away. It's downtown. Okay. Let's go there then. After driving to the restaurant and being seated, the waitress approached them. Have you decided? I think so. Honey, would you like a glass of wine? He called me honey, she thought. That's the first time. What does it mean? With a smile that went from one side of her face to the other, she answered, Yes, please. And have you decided what you're going to have for lunch? Yes, I have. So they ordered. Holding both of her hands across the table, Looking her in the eyes, John said, "I'm glad you came with me this morning. That was nice. I'd like to get your thoughts over lunch. I apologize for the office space. I have." Adding enthusiastically, "But we can make it much better. JT's needs to reflect what it is, not what it used to be." It was this kind of bravado that made her melt. That's why she loved him so much. He exuded confidence. She still didn't know what really happened to Jeanette. And if she did, she undoubtedly would have felt differently. Now that I've been to see what's available, I have some ideas. Would you like to hear them? Yes, certainly. I've come to the conclusion that all my old furniture has to go. Would you like to pick a new desk and chair for me? I can do that. I saw some nice ones. We'll need a table that sits 6 people for the meeting room. He said we. Did he mean us or JT's? She smirked thinking about it. She wanted it to be the former. She felt it was the former. Her smirk turned to a smile. John noticed and smiled back. I saw plenty of those, too. It has to be somewhat heavy duty. I agree, John responded, very businesslike. You'll need clocks, artwork, things for the wall, a chair to sit in at reception, all kinds of what I would call small things. Okay, can I leave that to you? Surprised, because of his suggestion, she said yes. Biting his lip, but not looking her directly in the eye, he said, I have a total budget of $5,000. Do you think we can do it? Daniela was enjoying the way she was being treated as his partner. She wasn't only going to be in charge of furniture selection for the new office. She had been given a budget. This, in her mind, was a bigger step. She was becoming an integral part of the business, more than just a girlfriend. To her, it clearly reflected a commitment on his part to their relationship. She looked at him and smiled. She was happy. A $5,000 budget? I think we can make it nice. Leave it in my hands. Of course, I'll get your input. John smiled, but underneath he was worried. This was the first time he hadn't been in total charge of what was happening at JT's. It was new for him. All he could do was hope it went well. He had always taken the bull by the horns, and now he was delegating something not to someone he was paying to perform a given function, but to his girlfriend. He had no recourse. He couldn't discipline her, couldn't fire her. He wasn't sure what it all meant, but he was fairly sure it meant something. Even though he didn't completely understand the feelings he was having because he had just relinquished some of the control of JT's to Daniela, he knew he wasn't totally at ease with it. It made him somewhat uncomfortable. It made him uneasy. She had her own interpretations of what had just happened, and they delighted her. She winked at him across the table and squeezed his hand she was now holding in her left hand. With her other hand, she lifted her glass, saying, "You've got a deal." He lifted his glass too. They tapped them together and toasted to the new relationship. The waitress returned with their lunch. Having completed the business they had come to discuss, They focused on what they were eating. She had ordered mussels in a white wine sauce. They were spiced perfectly. He had ordered a small steak, medium rare. Both of them had ordered a small chef salad. He had ordered it with pepper and a vinaigrette dressing. She had ordered a creamy balsamic dressing. Bon appetit, he said. Bon appetit. As they ate, their conversation drifted to the children. What they had done earlier, and the deal they had made, was fait accompli. Daniela wondered when she would next see the kids. She emphasized how much she had enjoyed skating with them. At the same time, she was sure to highlight how she felt about the relationship they were establishing. A solid one in her mind. One she wasn't going to jeopardize. He appreciated her awareness. He very much appreciated the sensitivity she showed because Tammy and John Jr. meant everything to him now that their mother was gone. He had submersed any feelings of guilt he may have had for what he had done. It was her fault in his mind, and that was all that mattered to him, especially now. I have a thought. Do you have any plans for this afternoon? No, I don't. Why? I thought you might like to come to my place. You'd be there when they get back from school. I'd take the afternoon off. You can do that? I think so. I'd like to go by the office first and check on the crews, but otherwise I'm in pretty good shape. I can finish what I started this morning tomorrow. It's not that pressing. I'd love to, she answered excitedly, smiling. Let's do it then. When we finish up here, we'll go by the office. I'll check on the crews, and we can go by my place. That'd be great. They ate the rest of their lunch. He settled the bill, and they left. It only took John half an hour to check on the crews, although he suggested that she go home and he'd come by in an hour, maybe an hour and a half, to pick her up. She refused and suggested they go by his place together. That way, she could leave by herself and he could stay at home. He agreed. Maria was somewhere in the house vacuuming when they arrived. John held the door for Daniela as he let her in. The kids are still at school. Maria is somewhere around here. I hear the vacuum. Come in. Have a seat, he said with his outstretched hand indicating the couch. Thank you, she said, as she made her way across the living room to sit. Can I get you something to drink? Do you have any tea? Fortunately, he was around the corner out of sight. He grimaced. Death Camus came to mind. But it didn't stop there. A flood of images came to mind. He could see Jeanette looking deathly sick. Little did she know. He remembered making the concoction on the small hot plate in the garage. He remembered the final injections. He had done it. The thought of it horrified him. I do. Would you like a cup? On second thought, I'll have one more glass of wine if you have any. I do. White or red? I'll have white, please. Okay. Maria, he shouted. I'm home. Daniela is with me. and he opened the refrigerator to get some chilled white wine out. He took the cork out and poured a glass for Daniela. He then reached for a glass he had put on the counter and put some ice in it. Getting some rum from the stock he kept in the cupboards, he proceeded to make himself a drink. Holding the drinks in his hands, he joined Daniela in the living room. Maria came down from upstairs. "Hi, you're back early from work. Hi, Daniela. How are you?" "I'm fine, thank you." Daniela and I were out looking at office furniture this morning for the new place. How did it go? It went well, I think. Daniela? I think it went well. Anyway, Daniela has agreed to pick out the furniture for the new place. "When are you moving?" Maria asked. "The end of the month." "Will you be ready?" "I think so. What do you think, Daniela?" "I think so too. I don't see any problem. I already have a lot of the furniture picked out. I'll get your okay before I go ahead, dear." John smiled and gently punched her in the shoulder. "Can I get you any lunch?" Maria asked. "No, thank you. We had something to eat after we went furniture shopping. I shouldn't say shopping. Window shopping, so to speak. I understand. I want to get this housework down before the children come back from school." "What time do they usually get home?" John asked. "Just before 4. Are you going to have dinner with them?" "Will Daniela be there?" "I would like that. I have an idea," John started. "I can barbecue." And he got up to look in the freezer. "Maria, do you know if we have any meat?" "There should be steaks in the freezer." "There they are," John said, taking them out and putting them on the counter to thaw. "Will you join us, Maria?" She looked at her watch and then toward the ceiling, as if thinking, and said, "Yes, that is very nice." "My pleasure. You are welcome any time." Maria smiled and went to finish the housework. This was working out well for John and Daniela. It was only the second time the kids were going to spend any time with Daniela, and Maria was going to be there. She had been with the Travers for years, so there was no doubt she would act as a buffer. Daniela alone would have been brand new for them. They looked at one another and smiled. They both obviously understood this. John rejoined Daniela on the couch. She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. He smiled. Danielle and John chatted on the couch without discussing anything of importance when suddenly they could hear a school bus out front. They looked at one another knowingly. The children would be home any minute now. The door opened and closed. Boots were being kicked off. Coats were being hung in the closet. Johnny yelled out, "Maria, we're home." "She's downstairs vacuuming. She'll be up in a minute." "Daddy!" he screamed. "What are you doing here?" "Daddy! Daddy!" Tammy screamed, running around the corner, stopping abruptly when she saw Daniela. "Hi, Tammy. How was your school?" Daniela asked. Her initial surprise left her, and she answered with her sweet voice, "It was fine." "Hi, Johnny," Daniela said as he came around the corner. "How was school for you?" she asked. "It was fine too. We did some arithmetic. It was fun." "That's good to hear. You must be a budding mathematician," she said, smiling. "I don't know." John got up from the couch and stroked their heads. Tonight I am going to barbecue. Would you like that? Yes, they both answered. That's good. Daniela is going to stay for dinner with us. Not only that, Maria is having supper with us too. Yay! The children screeched. Did you want to go downstairs and watch television? Yes. Johnny and Tammy scurried downstairs. John knew he had to somehow change her habit of watching so much TV, but he hadn't gotten around to it yet. He had plenty of things occupying his mind these days, not the least of which was what he had done. I'm going to go start the barbecue. Okay. I'm not sure who the kids were yaying about, Maria or me. Nor am I, but I wouldn't worry. It's a process. It's going to take time. I know. It's just... She paused, searching for the correct word. Frustrating. I know it is. It's gone a lot better than I thought it would. Please be patient. They're only children, and they lost their mother. It's going to take some time, but it will work. Don't let them get in the way of us. I already have. It took me some time too. I know it affected you. I'm sorry. I'm willing to put the time in, as frustrating as it may be. It's for us in the end, and that's worth it. At least for me. Me too. Let me get the barbecue going. They eat at 5. Something else you'll have to get used to. No, I'm kidding. I don't usually get home from work until 6. Maria prepares her supper. I normally eat by myself. I'll be patient. Thanks, John answered and went outside to get the barbecue going. A lot was going through Daniela's mind. Maybe she had bitten off more than she could chew. She hoped not. But she was a young, attractive, educated woman who was in a relationship with an older man who had 2 kids of his own. That wasn't to say he wasn't attractive, because he was. He was successful too. She wouldn't have gotten involved with him if she wasn't attracted to him. She was confused. She needed to give the whole situation more time. John was probably right. He had said it was going to take some time. She knew she was being impatient. She vowed not to be. If it was going to end in marriage, it would do so on its own merits. Outside influences weren't going to have anything to do with that. Right now, they were working against it. And that's not what she wanted. They had made so much progress in just the last couple of weeks. I'll be more patient. John came in from the backyard. Did you want another glass of wine or something else? You mentioned tea earlier. I could make you some. No, I think I'll have another glass of wine. May I help you barbecue? Of course, he said as he walked over to get her empty glass from the coffee table. Are you having anything? I think I'll have another rum and coke. Better take your glass too. That'd help, he said, scooping up his empty glass too. He walked to the kitchen, poured her some more wine, and prepared himself a rum and coke. Looking at his wristwatch, he said from the kitchen, "Do you want to help me with the steaks?" "Sure. Come into the kitchen. We'll spice and marinate them." Daniela got up from the couch and went to the kitchen. "What can I do?" she asked, as he took the steaks out of their wrappers. "You can prepare the marinade. One moment. I'll get you a pan." He reached down to one of the cupboards and took a glass pan out. He put it on the counter, reached into the refrigerator to get some red vinegar, barbecue, and soy sauce out, and put it on the counter. "There are the spices in this cupboard," he said while opening it to get the salt and pepper out. "Do you need anything else?" "That's a good start. I'll start to make it." Once Daniela had prepared the marinade, they together put the steaks in to let them soak. He would put them on the grill in 15 minutes. "We should prepare rice or potatoes, a vegetable too. Let's see what we have," he said, looking into the refrigerator. "Asparagus? That would be nice. Then I would very much prefer rice." "Rice it is then. It's down there in the cupboard." Daniela and John prepared the rice and vegetables. He went out to the barbecue to put the steaks on for a few minutes on each side. He let the kids cook a little longer. They didn't like medium rare. Medium was all right, but medium rare? No way. She had prepared the table. Everything was ready. "Dinner is served," he called out. Marie and the children came upstairs. They were impressed. The table was set. An open bottle of red wine sat on the table, as was the rice and asparagus. There were lit candles in the middle. "Sit where you'd like. Danielle and I will take whatever chairs remain." The kids sat in their usual spots. Maria sat beside them, ensuring the two remaining chairs were next to one another. Everyone was seated, and John started serving the kids. He passed the rest of the food around the table. Marie and Daniela served themselves. Daniela said to John, "Can I put some steak on your plate?" "Yes, please." This was a treat for the kids. They weren't used to having a romantic adult dinner. Nor was anybody else there except Daniela. She had been taken out before. Dinner was pleasant. The children were behaved. Most of the time, they sat in awe of what was going on around them. Daniela enjoyed it too, although not done intentionally at all. It served as indoctrination for her too. She enjoyed it. She could grow to love the children as if they were her own. That would explain the smile she had all the way through dinner. John also grinned constantly. He had taken her hand at least half a dozen times during the course of dinner. Each time he had squeezed it. This added to Daniela's sense of belonging. She didn't think there could be a happier woman in this world. They had apple pie and ice cream for dessert. After dinner, Maria went home. The kids went downstairs to watch television, and John and Daniela stayed upstairs to clean up and then relax. "I think that went fairly well," John said. "So do I. You're right. I have to be more patient. It's going to take some time, but Johnny and Tammy seem to accept us more each time we're together around them." "I agree. They'll get used to us because we're going for a long time." They both smiled at this and had a long kiss. The kiss turned passionate until they both pulled back, simultaneously saying, "The kids." They chuckled. "I'll be going." "Give a call tomorrow." "I will." "Say goodnight to Johnny and Tammy for me." "Say goodnight yourself." She thought that was a good point, so went to the top of the stairs and with her head through the doorway said, "Good night, Johnny, Tammy." The children looked at one another and smiled. "Good night, Daniela." This made her smile. She turned and walked toward the front door, but before she could get out, John came over and gave her a big kiss. "Good night. Thanks for coming by." He opened the door for her. "You're welcome. Bye. Don't forget to call me tomorrow. I didn't think you'd have the furniture selected already. It looks like we have some work to do. Bye." Waving, he closed the door. He went to the kitchen, mixed himself a rum and coke. Kids still had an hour before they went to bed, so he went to the living room to relax. He'd been on pins and needles all evening, wanting to make sure the kids were at ease as possible. He felt they were. He felt the entire evening had gone well. The children had only spent time with Daniela twice now. Their acceptance of her started high, and tonight only improved that. It certainly hadn't diminished it. He smiled. He was very happy. He pumped his fist in the air. Daniela was on the road now, on the way home. She was smiling as she put her turn signal on. She thought it had gone very well too. John sat sipping his rum and coke on the couch in the living room. The kids were downstairs. He was so pleased. Dinner had gone much better than he had expected. He had expected the kids to be withdrawn, almost sullen. They had been anything but. He couldn't complain about how things were going. It made him wonder why he had been so reluctant to get involved with Daniela in the first place. He had always been extremely attracted to her. She was extremely good looking. Tomorrow was going to be another busy day for him. He had to follow up on the bids he had dropped off earlier this week. Wouldn't it be nice if I got them both, he thought. Daniela had already selected office furniture, or so she had him believe anyway, so they wouldn't have to make arrangements to get it. He also wanted to finish a roofing flyer he had started today. He couldn't forget his workout with Jean-Paul either. He couldn't figure out why he was so obsessed with learning more about Jean-Paul. After all, Jeanette had cheated on him with Jean-Paul. It had devastated him. He had killed her because of it. He didn't know why he couldn't leave it alone. Is it a desire to try and make sense of what happened in my marriage? Why it had gone wrong? Most people in his situation would have left it alone and tried their best to forget about it, but not John. He always blamed her for having strayed. But the truth be told, he didn't know what had happened. He always thought they had a great marriage. They had 2 wonderful kids. He was handsome and successful. She was beautiful. She was a good mother who would never have let any harm come to her children. They had always got along. Nonetheless, something went wrong, and he reacted in the worst way possible in his mind. He had killed her. He had thought it out. It was premeditated. If she had a complaint that was at all valid, it would have been that she was considered a trophy wife. Nothing could have been farther from the truth, except, of course, her looks. The term, they had always felt, was applied too easily, too indiscriminately. They weren't even sure it wasn't applied out of jealousy. They had been very comfortable with the roles they played in their relationship. He hoped getting to know Jean-Paul would shed some light on why she had ruined their marriage by totally betraying him. He only knew of one way of finding out if Jean-Paul could help clarify what had happened, and that was to befriend him. John knew it could be difficult on him. Most people would call it sadistic, but it was something that had to be done. That was why he had joined Lifestyles. He didn't want Jean-Paul making the link between him and Jeanette. He felt he could, and so far had, accomplished this. John was totally successful. Maybe then Jean-Paul would say something that would help him understand the situation, because as it stood, he didn't. He had a penchant for understanding things, for understanding where he had gone wrong, if in fact he had gone wrong. Penchant was putting it politely. Others would have said obsession.